You know you want to dance.
We're practicing self-control right now.
You guys, if you knew how hard it was. And here goes the beat. Spill your guts. With Sam and Charlie. Back at it again. Episode 11. Here we go. Listen, you guys, I know that it's every single time and it's probably getting old, but when that little beat drops, I just can't help it. I just can't help myself.
I got to make sure Heath, who came up with that beat, hears it live one time. He doesn't need to listen to the whole thing, although I think he would be into it. But he needs to hear his beat from his beat lab.
Dude, Heath, thank you. Wherever you are, thank you from the beat lab. We are ever grateful. Well, welcome back. If you're joining us after last week, we were talking about our praying mantises and falcons and depression. Okay. Jesse's very excited about his sound effects today.
Don't give me so many opportunities right off the bat.
But no, we had a huge discussion about which I'm just gonna say. I felt so much better after we talked about that, and just like I hope that everybody else was feeling it too and was able to kind of join the conversation. How did you feel after we had that big talk?
Way better. I didn't realize I had so much stuff I was sitting with too many things and not talking about it, which, imagine that. You need to connect with people and share your feelings in order to improve your mental health. Weird.
It's something, right? And that's something that we were talking about is after we both confessed our sadness to each other and we decided we had to talk about it and bring it on the podcast. But also the importance of us walking our spiritual talk, and making sure all these things that we talk about, offering up all these different tools for people's toolbox, different modalities, different things we talk about, actually practicing them. And I confess to you that I was struggling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were not doing our, spiritual reps. We weren't, I was just trying to survive because I overextended myself and then, was I just need more quiet time. And then, but still didn't do anything to actually help myself other than be alone, which actually probably didn't help my depression in hindsight.
Well, I kept seeing this thing popping up on Instagram too. It was I don't know if it was a specific quote from somebody or if it's just a theme, because we talked about how collectively a lot of people were actually digging through some heavy energy and heavy feelings. Mm-hmm. So one of the things I kept seeing on Instagram was talking about how a lot of times, and I don't know if this is generational, right? But a lot of times people sort of recluse and subconsciously pull away to deal with things alone because often they were left to deal with their feelings alone as kids.
Totally. My mom to this day, and I don't know if it's because I was an only child, but I would put myself in my room. I would put myself.
You would ground yourself?
I would ground myself. And looking back at that, I'm I wonder what I was probably trying to create peace and calm because something disrupted that. And I felt safe and calm in my room alone. Also putting on several dance performances for all my stuffed animals.
As you do. As you do.
Which to this day, we know movement, improves our energy. But dancing in particular really just changes the game with me.
Girl, I know you had that Rhythm Nation choreography on point. We are women of a certain age. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Miss Jackson, if you're nasty. I'll also I'll be adding Janet Jackson to our list of celebrity endorsement deals, please. Yes.
Let's get her on the podcast.
Put her on the notes. Put her on the podcast. Janet.
You're not busy.
I stand.
Yeah, if you can fit us into your schedule.
So I'm going to out myself a little bit, actually, on this episode.
Yeah, you are, because we're talking about spiritual practice. And listen, for the record, I told Mandi that she didn't have to share this. However, she is the most talented, gifted reader that I have ever come across. And I think she should start a YouTube and become YouTube famous. And then we can leave all this behind together.
Yay!
She is very uncomfortable, and we're gonna support her as we do.
Well, okay, so when Rachel says reader, what she's talking about is cards. Okay.
Yes.
And the reason why I'm uncomfortable is because if you've been listening or if you know me in life, you know that that in another lifetime, I was actually very steeped in evangelical church culture. I was a youth pastor along with my husband for many years. And my faith journey that I'm even on now began in that space. And so I said I was going to out myself because last week when we were sharing our depression,
Doomsday Lullaby,
which we still have to tell them about. Let's just keep like leading them along like with that and never explaining what that is. We'll just keep dropping it so that they have to keep listening to find out. We'll tell you next week about Doomsday Lullaby. Or we won't. But you had suggested like, hey, wouldn't it be so cool if we pulled some cards on the podcast and we talked about that. And I was like, and I kind of like freaked out a little bit. And so we decided to devote an entire episode to
plot twist. We're doing it.
Plot twist. We're doing it because actually like in our friendship, aside from like retreats and the podcast and all the things that we get to work on together, just as friends, one of the things that that we do when we're supporting each other is, you know, encouraging each other in all of our spiritual practices. And do we mean what we say, and gently, you know, holding each other accountable. But one of the tools for me that I use along with the journaling, the breath work, the meditation, all the things that you guys hear us talk about is I am really into tarot. And Rachel wanted to specifically have a card pull and talk about it on the podcast, and I freaked out. So I told her I would submit myself to having this conversation on the podcast.
Well, and I think it's important because it's a very and Mandi will tee it up how she does, which is like so beautiful. It like resonates with. I've literally never seen it not resonate with someone like, oh, this is what it actually is. Mm-hmm. But it's a way for us to like kind of get grounded and settle in and even just pause for a minute and maybe think about something, a situation differently, or get a little more insight, or maybe just like confirm. For me, usually cards just kind of confirm what I already know, or like am afraid to admit, or like succumb to, you know what I mean? So for me, it's like, I even think about when we ran that 40-40 challenge a few years ago. I don't even know how long ago that was.
It was last like New Year's.
A lifetime ago.
I know.
But something that, a habit that I am going to work on getting back into is I liked pulling a card in the morning and just reading and thinking about it, or even like a spirit guide. And then like, holy shit, I saw that animal today. Like, what's that about? Right. So it's very, it's a very tangible thing that anyone can do to help them kind of like get refocused on their spiritual practice.
Absolutely. I would say I totally agree with you. I think that it's like one of the best tools to use as like guidance.
Yeah. And it's fun.
And it's fun. And it's, you know, it's controversial for many reasons, right? Which we'll get into. But I think that most anybody who with an open mind is always surprised by how the cards kind of show up for them, and not like in a weird, like evil demonic witchcraft way. Right. But it's more in a, like your own awareness, your own intuition, your own energy, your own higher self sort of shows up in a tangible way, that I have not found happens in any other way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's really, really cool to like you said, to kind of, let it guide your day or affirm certain things or act like a confirmation. And for people who aren't really believers, it can seem very suggestive, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's almost always right on point. Mm-hmm. Right. And so you can either sort of embrace it as miraculous coincidence or that it's just completely suggestive and bullshit. And that's fine either way. I don't care.
Well, that always goes back to either this is all real
or I'm mentally ill.
But either way, it makes us feel better and it's not hurting anything.
Exactly. So when when I read for people, so I'm going to get into share a little bit of my story just because it's, I was confronted with my fear around this when you wanted to talk about it on the podcast. And I had to kind of go, well, wait a minute. Why am I being weird? And I had to kind of confess to myself and to you that tarot is something that I've still kept so hidden off my social media. Like I have so many people who are like, why don't you advertise that you do readings and, offer this to people? And I'm like, no, oh my gosh, I can't do that. Like I've been like a closeted tarot person. And I even wrote a blog post a couple months ago about like coming out of the spiritual closet that kind of like addressed some of the stuff. But the truth is like, when I was 18, like just fresh into the adult world, I basically found myself on my own, like more quickly than I had anticipated. Like I did not have the traditional like, oh, you're going to move to college or you're gonna. Yeah, I was like out on my own immediately. And there's like a whole story there that I'll share someday, but I found myself basically like just out there. And what I found that comforted me, was church. And yep. I actually started going to, this thing called Young Life, which maybe people out there know about, maybe people don't, but, it's like a non-denominational youth group type thing. And they're really big on, and you're going to laugh at this, but it's a stepping stone, right? They're really big on camps, like youth camps. Yeah. So, I've always been a retreat gal.
Here we are.
I'm a big believer because, when I was 18 years old and basically homeless, the tribe that welcomed me and took me in was that tribe, and it was faith-based. And I learned all about Jesus and I got very passionate and I was like, this is it. Mm-hmm. This is it. Capital T truth. Let's go. Purpose, right? We talked about, the reality of purpose last week.
Yes.
And so my entanglement with purpose began when I stepped into church culture because and it really did affect who I became as a leader and affects me still in ways that still surprise me. But
I was just thinking, even on our retreats, you're still leaning back on even some of those activities and leadership and how to even like tee up the spiritual conversation. Mm-hmm. Like when we were talking about a retreat in Arkansas, we had a lot of very like a lot of actually diverse different religions. And I was so happy to have you there because I had a different experience with church culture. And I was like, man, I needed someone to help me like change the language and like really make this like accessible to people and make them feel included and welcome.
Well, and it's tough, right? Like when you get, and as we kind of, a few episodes back when we had our girl Carla on and she was sharing about her project where she was investigating, marriage and all things within the realm of faith. And she kind of was sharing her journey in that. And, it was kind of leading us to have the discussion about, well, how does faith affect the way you love yourself? Right.
Yeah.
And so I would like to pick that back up in this conversation because to me, the faith that I found when I was 18, and and sort of like desperate to find somewhere to belong and desperate to feel like I had a purpose, right? Woo, here it comes. I'm getting emotional already. That definitely eventually did affect the way I was loving myself, because the faith that I felt when I first discovered it was like so pure, right? And I was all in, and I was just like, oh, every hard thing I went through was because of this, and I'm gonna take all these hard things that happen, and I'm gonna be able to share with all these teenagers and go, hopefully, share with them so that they can make different decisions and see that there's like a plan for their life and a purpose for their life and this and that. And I did that, and I went hard for many, many years. That's how I met my husband. It's like the whole foundation of our marriage and our life was like out of that culture. Mm-hmm. And so I'm grateful. I'm at a place now where I, even though I don't live within that culture anymore, I no longer like have beef with it.
Yeah.
But I did. I did for many years as I was coming out of it, because after about 10 years or so, and we had been married like 10 years and doing ministry and going hard, in that culture, and you get a little older, and we started kind of seeing how politics were woven into that. And pretty soon, the pure sort of like, what is the word I want? Unconditional, just awesome love and forgiveness that I had felt that when I first, stepped into that world of faith, started to get chipped at by people's theology and people's, people wanting to start arguments about like doctrine and whose interpretation of the Bible was correct. And I mean, and as a young mom, like with little kids, like feeling all this pressure that like, if my man was really a godly man, he would provide enough for me to stay home. And that would be like the right way to raise your kids. And it was like the pressure that was on us to like live a certain way, and just, it started feeling gross, and then I started to really like question some things. And then it was like, well, hey, Mike, you better get a hold of your lady. She's really asking some questions out here. and within church culture, that's totally appropriate. It's kind of like, as a man, you have to have control of your household, or you are falling short. It's a slippery slope. Like, I'm using all these buzzwords on purpose, right? And the greatest gift of all time is that Mike Holden, God bless his stubborn Sagittarius ass, he just like refused to like be pigeonholed by that stuff. Like he just, even still, he won't even like let me influence him a certain way. Like he believes what he believes, and that's it. Like he won't let me put my Reiki hands on him. Like he thinks some of my woo-woo stuff that I do, he just kind of laughs at me, but he totally gives me absolute freedom to be myself and have my own beliefs and my own opinions. And a lot of the times our stuff aligns, and we have grown and evolved together. But when we were about 10 years married and sort of, we started to feel this struggle. I call it when the string began to get pulled from the sweater. That's what I called it. And once you start to pull the string from the sweater, you cannot put it back. So I was feeling like all of my beliefs, my foundation was being like tugged on and pulled on and like kind of torn apart by people who quote unquote loved me. Right. And were making me question all of these things, which at the time was devastating. It was absolutely devastating because I had gone all in on that life. Right. Like that was it. I was going to be that. And so when it was questioned and started to get pulled from under me, it was absolutely devastating because I wasn't just losing my faith. I was losing then my community and my family, basically, because that's who picked me up when I was, 18 and basically outside of my family. And so it was really, really hard to stand up for what I was feeling, even though it was in like the threat of losing all of that, right?
Yeah, I'd be really curious because I feel like Catholic in particular, like really pushed me away, and to the point where I like rejected all spiritual practice, any religion. I was just like, no, like I couldn't even honestly hear about it. Like I'd be like, don't talk to me, like just completely reject it. But it like took that push to kind of like find where I am now.
Yeah.
Which is which was like, again, like my own terms and definition and still forming. But I don't think I would have found it without like feeling rejected or even thinking like I'm part of a group that excludes people. And I'm all about inclusion. So like I had to come up with my own spiritual work, and what a like breath of fresh air that was, because now it's something that I really enjoy and participate and try to like welcome other people into, and a little bit of an act of rebellion against how I felt like I was treated.
Like you were told to be, right? Like I hear that. Like you needed the contrast to sort of push you into your spirituality now.
Yeah.
And I would say the same for me. It's been like a pendulum swing though, right? Because out of rebellion, right? It was, I felt like we were, it was terrible too, because we were young parents and we were really struggling financially because, you know, we were trying to like have this lifestyle where I was home with our kids. And so eventually it was like, okay, well, we can't do that. We live in a world where 2 incomes are necessary. So I was doing like home daycare in my house. Okay. And it was absolutely the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And I don't recommend it to anybody. But we did that because we felt like that was what we had to do to like, so that I could be home. Right. Okay. And Mikey didn't have all this shame around him, like not being this godly man who couldn't provide. And I mean, I know it sounds crazy now, but it was real life pressure. And then so to be struggling like that and kind of hanging on by a thread, and then to have people coming in and questioning, like, you know, to the point of like who we were even listening to biblically. And like, I remember it was in this time that I was really starting to question and abandon some of my like faith stuff and move away from it, that I also was getting near to joining the gym. And there wasn't a lot of time in between, which is significant for conversations later. But I remember I started writing my blog, and even in my early blog, if you go back and look at like some of the stuff I was writing, like my first year of blogging, it's very like the language is very churchy. And I know now, like in hindsight, that I was really struggling. I was having a faith crisis, really. And I didn't, like the kids on TikTok now call it deconstruction, but I did like, and everybody's doing it, right? Like there's whole communities and support around like deconstructing people who are leaving churches, like lots of conversations happening like about that now. But like 10 years ago, there was not. Like we were falling away, quote unquote, you know? And so I remember, in the earlier blog, like before I joined the gym, but I was really starting to try to focus on like how I could lose weight. And I knew I was miserable and depressed, and the faith piece was a huge part of it, but I wasn't really aware of that yet. So I'm, you know, kind of focusing on like trying to eat different and change. And I didn't realize that it would be leading up to joining the gym and that whole life turn that was about to happen that I didn't know. But I remember somebody who I respected very much came into, but I was also like, it was one of the contentious friends that I had, right? It was he, and he slid into my DMs on one of my blog posts. And he was like, hey, you know, I think it's really cool that, you know, you're doing, you know, all this stuff, but you know, you really can't take credit for this weight loss. You really have to give God the glory, and was like scolding me. Like scolding me for it. And I was just like, is God like honestly that insecure? I'm dead ass. I genuinely am not trying to be disrespectful, but that is the thought I had. Like to this point, like if I cannot like celebrate myself a smidge because I'm such a sinner and like, just should be living all of my days just in complete, like, what? That sounds real insecure to me. That sounds real narcissistic. And I just, again, it's once you pull the string from the sweater, you can't put it back. And so then it got pushed into this realm of, I ended up having a really, really close friend of mine who I'm hoping will agree to be on the podcast later. She made the brave and bold decision to come out, and she was a youth pastor that I was basically mentored by, because there weren't a lot of women on staff in those leadership roles, in the organization that I worked for. And I still look up to her. She's still a wonderful, great friend of mine. And, she chose to honor herself and be true to herself. And I watched her be completely just decimated.
No.
Within the community that we all served in. And I couldn't believe it. I literally was like, this woman was literally washing our feet at a leader retreat that we had been to like a month before she decided to come out, was washing all of our feet. And everybody was like in awe of like her genuine humility and wanting to like serve leaders and like mentor us. And then within months was completely like blackballed. And that was all it took. That was all it took for me. I was like, well, I guess I'm an ally. Because and then there was another story after that with somebody else who I love very much. And it was like, I started to understand that like the people who had the privilege to remain like rooted in those beliefs did not actually love anyone that was gay, or at least weren't aware that anybody in their life that they loved was gay. Because when you're presented with like actually somebody you love or could be related to, it like is going to go ahead and burn for eternity because they're not following like some random rules, you know, that nobody can agree on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, it's just at this point, like this stuff starts to like not make sense. And it's like, I just really started to walk away from all of it. And the faith crisis that I did not address then, I then tapped into later.
Don't worry. It's still present.
Yeah, because I felt like my everything was like kind of pulled out from under me, and I did not know what to do. Like, you know, we talked last week about purpose, right? And I felt like, well, okay, my purpose was to, you know, be missional with how I loved on teenagers. And at that point I was speaking at camps and leading kids, and I was speaking at women's retreats and leading Bible studies. And I like identified as a leader, missional leader. And that was like taken away from me because of my allegiance to like the people I loved, right? Instead of like the allegiance of the God of the Bible. And so I was immediately blackballed and fell into the most depressing and weird time of my life, and ended up being the heaviest weight I ever was because I was suffering underneath all of that. And that's when I began my weight loss story that a lot of people know now. Right. And of course, then stepped right into the missional work of taking the mission to the masses in a different way. I was like, I have arrived. This is it. This is what it was all along. And then I found out later that also that had to come down.
God damn it. Can we just have one thing?
No, this is what hey, welcome to spirituality. Everything that you stand upon will be crushed beneath you until you submit. It's great times.
To picking up that tarot deck.
Yeah, well, and the truth is it's because I really didn't do any of my work, right? Like I went from what I learned after my time with my team and in the fitness space for a while is that I went into that with all of my wounding from church that I never healed and worked on. Right. I just went ahead and just jumped right back in leading and without boundaries and without doing any real deep inner work on myself. And I ended up crashing and burning. Right. And if I had to go backwards, it's like, that's what happened to me after I started my faith collapse, right? Like I didn't do the work. I didn't do the things. I just jumped into a new thing. And if I go back even further, I jumped into the church stuff without working on my deep inner stuff that I was coming out of from my childhood, right? So I'm hoping this is translating and making sense, because now here I am now at 40 looking at this all in hindsight, and I'm realizing that all along it was the same theme.
Yep.
And I didn't listen, right? I didn't stop and listen. Of course, when I was 18, I just jumped in where I felt welcome and like felt like I belonged, and I just went hard. And then when that fell apart, I did it again. And when that fell apart, I did it again. And when that fell apart, I started learning how to read tarot cards.
It's so crazy to me, though, that we will repeat and repeat and repeat until we learn the lesson. Even if it means we lose everything.
Yeah.
We will stay on it. Or I even think like relationships, like if I look back and like the type of person I dated, it was the same type of person, the same type of person. And it's like, until I stopped and did the work, I was gonna keep having the same results.
Exactly. It's like, listen to your life. Right. Yeah. And for me, the same theme was like, okay, we cannot show up and just pour ourselves out in reckless abandon for this cause. Yes. Because the truth is there wasn't anything wrong with any of it. There's nothing wrong with church or anybody's faith. There's nothing wrong with like the passion and purpose I felt when I was in my fitness industry position. There's nothing wrong with any of that. What was wrong was with me. I was trying so desperately to like, please say I'm valuable. Please say I'm worth something here. Please, like, this is where I belong, right? And every time I've put all my stock into a thing that isn't the truth for me, that doesn't come like out of a love for myself first, it always falls apart. So it's really no shade to anybody or anything. It's just, this is just my lesson and the way it showed up over and over. And I feel like I'm finally at a point now where I'm like, all right, we can love things and we can have passion, but we got to have boundaries, and we can't lose ourselves and like seek an identity within these things. Like I have to just continually show up as just me. Right? I don't need to be somebody to be worthy of a space at the table. Right. Yeah. And that's the hard lesson that I've had to learn. And so, sorry, I was going to say long story short, but long story long, I know that, it's like cause it's a huge jump, right? From being like a youth pastor for 10 years to like, now I'm doing retreats and we're talking about meditation and we're reading tarot and I am, Reiki master certified, and I have to explain to people what Reiki means. And there is a part of me, because I still have this like fear from Christian culture that, and I know from being in that world, how you are trained to argue and combat people with opposing views. So I go into all these conversations knowing exactly what's coming for me. And it's just exhausting. It's exhausting, and I avoid it at all costs, because every time it ends in like a loss of relationship. Because a lot of times certain people with certain convictions cannot step outside of that because they feel like they're not honoring their beliefs. And so I've had to accept that and respect it, but also I have to grieve it every time. So there's a part of me that it's held back from sharing fully out there, that I, no longer like align or identify as a certain faith per se anymore, because it gets controversial. People don't want to hear that like Jesus shows up for me when I'm reading tarot, that Jesus shows up for me in Reiki, because that's blasphemous. Right. And I'm just not interested in like, having to explain myself or get anyone's approval on that. But I also am not willing to hide anymore, which is why I'm grateful that you kind of encouraged me to go there tonight, because if we're out here spilling our guts and talking about all this stuff, like I can't reserve that part of myself and be afraid.
And it's a space and a talent that you really shine at. Like it's something that like people know you for this. And what's interesting is like, even when you tee this up and explain it, you even, I feel like, still kind of use like a little bit of church language. Like you're almost like acting as just like not a channel, but like a funnel, like a filter through which people can like receive higher messages, or you call them breadcrumbs. So like, as much as anyone might like try to refute this, it's like it's still a similar concept. Like it's a way for you to get in touch with a higher self or a universal truth or godliness, like whatever you want to call it.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you said that, because I totally forgot that was one of the things I wanted to make sure I said. The pendulum swing, right, of rebellion, right? Like, so, you know, as I've gone through this cycle of like losing myself in a thing to have to like let it crumble to find myself again, right? That's the lesson that's repeated. This last time it happened to me, I no longer had my quote unquote faith to go back to, right? Because I had thrown that out the window, right? Like, okay, you don't love gay people, I'm out of here. Like, I don't want it. So I went like the completely opposite way I could totally go. I was like, all right, well, let's get in some weird stuff, you know? And I went and had Reiki because I was super stressed out, and I was like, okay, energy, that feels like it makes sense to me, because I know that there's still, even though I don't necessarily believe in this like, you know, capital T truth, like God as I used to thing anymore. Like I still know that I'm like a soul. I know there's something else. I know that there is a source of love, and I'm trying to understand it, and I'm going to seek something. So I heard about Reiki and about how it's like, you know, energy healing, and it can help you with like managing your energy. And with what I was going through at the time, I was like, listen, I need anything. I'll put a stone in my bra. I will let somebody do what, like cleanse my aura, do something, right? My life's falling apart. And so I really went at it in sort of rebellion, where I was like, all right, I can't go over there to like Bible Jesus anymore. So I'm going way over here. Let's see what you got over here. But reluctant, like I sound like I'm being a badass, but like, let me just tell you, when I was in my first Reiki certification class, there was a part of me that was like, what am I doing? What am I doing? What am I doing? Because the indoctrination was still so woven. You know, I had a hard time relaxing into it and really like, and so it was interesting because, and I tell this story, but, we had to do these guided meditations when we were learning Reiki. And there's like, you know, Reiki is Japanese in its origin, and you got to learn these like kanji symbols and all this cool stuff. And you do these meditations each time you learn a symbol. And, so I was just, you know, trying to be really respectful and not let my brainwashed brain come in and like sabotage me. And, it was interesting because in, one of the last meditations that first time, because I had to do like 3 separate certs to get to like the master level that I am now. It took me like 3 years, but there he is. In one of the meditations, I remember the specific symbol that we were like thinking about and learning about sort of showed up as its Japanese kanji self. And then in my meditation, it kind of like turned into the dove of the Holy Spirit. And I remember I just instantly started crying. Like I burst into tears because I felt like I was being shown, like, you already know me.
Oh,
it's just a different name. Like, and now I know that to be true. You know what I mean? That same faith, that same pure love, that unconditional love, the like, I know the things that you like will never tell a soul, and I still love you anyways, that I was shown at 18 is still the same thing that's showing up for me now. It's just got different language around it, you know? But like some people, we can't have that conversation.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? And so, and I know that. So I think that there's a part of me that's been like reserving this over here to keep it from being tainted or losing people. Really, it's out of like not wanting to lose people, but I'm on this train that's going 1,000 miles an hour that's not allowing me to retain relationships anymore with people who I have to be fake with. So
bye.
This is a big deal. Putting it out in the world, right? So with that, I'm gonna share a little bit of how Rachel keeps referring to how I tee it up. So at retreats, when we do offer tarot to people who are comfortable with it, I always say to them or anybody who I offer a reading to that you have to listen to my spiel before I'll read for you, because it's, because it does come with all kinds of stigma. Right. And I don't know where anybody's coming from. And I know the first time that I was brave enough to actually go get a tarot reading, the lady was awesome, but she was like, come on in, doll. She's like, we'll give you 15 minutes. And if it doesn't resonate, I'll give you your money back. I was just like, oh my God, what am I doing?
It was like Whoopi Goldberg from Ghost.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Whoopi Goldberg. Jeez. Patrick Swayze. Rest in peace. Anyways, you don't know where people are coming from. And I like to give the spiel because this lady went so fast when she gave my reading that I was like, okay, this was cool, but I didn't understand any of this. Like, she just kind of told me, like, threw out the cards and just assumed I knew what they were. And then I was on my way and I was like, well, I have no idea what just happened, actually. So I started learning tarot. Like, I started kind of studying it just out of my own pure curiosity to understand more of the reading that I got. And I found out that it is literally like a language. Mm-hmm. And that's what I like to tell people. Like, it is a language. Like, it is a story from beginning to end. There are 78 cards in a tarot deck. And I'm certainly no expert like anybody out there. I know there's people who literally study tarot. One of the best podcasts I listen to is called The Tarot Diagnosis, and it's two ladies who are actually psychotherapists who use tarot in their practice as like kind of what Rachel, what we were talking about, as like guideposts and different like ways to journal prompt and do. It's just so cool. So if you really, really want to learn from like real experts, that's like one of my favorite podcasts to listen to, because I'm just out here learning stuff on my own. I'm no expert, but if you lay all the tarot cards out from beginning to end, they go in a very specific order. This is what I always share with people. It starts with, one card is number one, and it ends with another card over here, because it is a story. It is the hero's journey. It is the human journey, the experience that we all have. We're all born and raised, and we have dreams and goals, and we, go out and we embark on them, and we build a thing and it collapses, and we rebuild a thing, and then we might fall in love and we fall out of love, and we have all these little deaths and rebirths and all these things, and it's all there in the cards. Like, every single like emotion and experience and different sort of conflict or anything that you can have with people, it's all there. The tarot tells the entire story of the human's journey, really. And all it is when you're looking at tarot is where you are in your story, if you're open to it. I've been doing it for how many years now, and I'm still shocked sometimes at the accuracy of what comes up for people.
It's pretty wild, honestly.
There's nothing I can do to like ever sway a reading any which way, and I've never even tried. I'm just kind of surrender, and I kind of call myself like, I'm just a translator. I'm just here to translate the language. That's it. Right? So the tarot deck itself is split up into two parts. It's called the Major Arcana and the Minor Arcana. And Arcana is a Latin word that means secrets. So the Major Arcana are our major secrets, right? Our big themes, like the big themes. They're like standalone cards. They're kind of like milestone, like important, like pay attention to these moments. And the Minor Arcana are little secrets. So they're more like our everyday, like our more practical, like day-to-day interactions, day-to-day stuff that we struggle with. And those Minor Arcana are split up into four parts, like a deck of playing cards. And so I always like to break that down for people, because, if you just like start flipping through a tarot deck, you're going to see all kinds of random stuff. You'll see like the Sun card or the Death card, or those are majors. And then you might also see like a Two of Pentacles or Three of Cups. Those are the minors. Did I say minors? I meant majors for the other one, minors for the small. So the minors split up into four different decks, just like a deck of playing cards, right? Instead of, diamonds, clubs, spades, etc. You have the pentacles, which represent earth signs, and also earth energy. So think of like your job your physical life. Like we're paying bills, we're getting gas, we're going here, we're going there. Earth energy is practical. It's literally grounded down to earth. It's usually focusing on our job, our money, our physical, tangible life. Then you have your swords, which are representative of air signs, but also swords represent our thoughts, our messages. Could be emails, could be a conversation. It could be an obstacle, anything basically with the mind that you have to sort of like work through is sword energy. Okay. Then you've got your cups, which represent like water signs. So your Pisces, your Cancer, your Scorpio, which Rachel and I are both. And, but cups is water energy, which is relationships. It's our feelings, our emotions, our relationships. Okay. And then finally your, wands are fire energy. So fire signs, your Leo, your Sagittarius, your Aries, but fire wand energy is like your passion projects. Like what lights you up? What are you excited about? What are the things that you literally like the spark of excitement is wand energy. Mm-hmm. So I like to tell people all of that because then just like how the full tarot deck tells a story, right? Within each suit, there's also a story. So if you were to lay out each one, the ace, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to the royal cards, they all tell their own story within that element. So then when somebody, sits down for a reading and they start to see these cards show up, they already kind of have a semblance of like the things that are showing up. If they're open to it, right? Mm-hmm. It's not like fortune telling. I'm not Miss Cleo out here. Like you can't. It is really.
My God, I forgot about her.
How could you, Miss Cleo, wherever you are? Bless.
Whatever happened to her?
I'm going to try to find a way to fit it in every time. But the cool thing is so like when we're sitting down for tarot, it's not like, oh, like I'm going to tell you what's about to come into your future. And this is me telling your future. It's not. It's literally like, if you're open to it, this is where you are in your story. If you continue, this is the energy you will be in. Right. So it gives you the opportunity to literally in your life sort of look at a bird's eye view. Right. Like you said, when we read cards, you get a lot of confirmation or things that like you might be avoiding. Right. That you don't. And they come out in the cards. I always say the cards don't mind their business. Right. Like they call you out every time. But it gives you the opportunity to not tell you your future, but to pause and to review. And like, if I continue this way, is this like really what I want? Is this really like where I'm headed? Like it gives you the opportunity to pause. And I think that's what's really special about tarot. And another thing that I will share since I'm on my spiel is people get freaked out specifically about like the death card or the devil card, And I always like to share that it's not like specifically like, oh, someone's going to die. Like if you get the death card, it's not like, oh, death is around the corner. It's right. Jesse. Oh my God. It's more like, like a death card when it shows up, it's like an ending. Like an ending is here. There's an end but with the death card, it's always like a renewal, a rebirth. It's the ending of something always means the beginning of a new something. So I'm always like, I always tell people before I read, like, if you get this card, don't bum out because some of the artwork is a little ominous. It's not death. It's accepting the ending of a thing. Right. Mm-hmm. And the other one is the devil card, specifically for someone like me coming out of like church culture. That's tough because you're like, it's the devil. It's actually not. The card, the energy of the card represents the ways that we ensnare ourselves. It's how we get in our own way. When the devil card shows up for me, I know that is significant to somebody is self-sabotaging, somebody is engaging in habits they know they shouldn't be doing. It might even be like an extreme, like an addiction or something. And that's actually not any of my business. I'm just there to translate, right? Mm-hmm. I just tell them what the energy of the card is, and it's up to them however they want to receive it, transmute it, think about it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I like to share all of that before we do readings. And as you've seen, everybody's minds get blown and it's wild. So there's my spiel recorded and put out and going to be put out into the world. So we did it. Shall I pull us a card? Oh, the other thing is too, if anybody's like interested in tarot, whatever, like tarot is its own specific thing. It's very specific. Like I said, it has very specific cards. Even if you get like themed decks, Like the artwork and stuff can all like be totally varied, but like in a tarot specific deck that is very specific, that deserves like reverence and like respect to learn, and they all have their own like specific story. But then you see all over Instagram, TikTok, everywhere that there's all kinds of other decks called oracle decks, which are just like, I like to say they're breadcrumb decks, right? Like little messages, more like affirmations that don't necessarily have like a very specific message behind them. But those are the ones that I encourage people to start with, because you can like really easily pull one of those cards, like you were saying, Rachel, in your daily practice, like in the morning. So I think that that's the kind of card I'm going to pull for us tonight, so that we don't get like too crazy.
And just to clarify, what kind of deck is this?
So I'm gonna have Rachel choose one of the. I brought a couple oracle decks, and I'm gonna let her choose one, and we're gonna just pull a card for this episode.
Okay.
And then maybe on a later date we'll do a full tarot spread for someone if I don't chicken out.
I'm so proud of you already.
Oh my gosh.
I'm just over here cheesing.
Okay, so I brought a couple options. I brought you the angel deck here. Okay. Or we got a little spirit guide deck. I like to say this is like the greatest hits of all the faith leaders. Jesus himself's in this one, so it's totally Jesus approved. And then I brought this other one. It's the light worker deck. So you got 3 to choose from. And then we can kind of give people a sample of how this works for me, because it's different for different tarot readers, but this is how I do it. Because I like people to have as much say of their reading as possible. So you pick. Which one's it going to be, lady? Shall I make Josie pick a card too?
Let's do the light worker. I don't know if I've done that one.
All right. So what I'm going to do is all my little superstitious stuff I do. Put a little Reiki, a little magic, a little Jesus on here. He's always with me.
Narrow. She's knocking. What are you knocking on the deck, or what's happening?
Listen, it's
ding dong.
I'm just clearing it up.
I do not have the right sound effects for this.
Knock knock.
So this specific deck is it's an oracle deck, so it's like just lots of different affirmations or different like messages, right? And the theme is very woo-woo-y, like very new agey. So it'll be nice and like broad for our audience. It'll be perfect. Okay. But what I want you to do, and this is what I do for anybody I read for, and this is not traditional at all. This is just the way I do it. That's why I'm doing
full disclaimer.
Right. Yeah. Full disclaimer. So I'm going to have you, Rachel, close your eyes, take a big deep breath through the nose, out through the mouth. Okay, Jesse, I'm putting you on sound effect probation.
All right. I'll stop. It felt right.
It did feel right, actually. So get grounded, whatever that means for you. And I would like you to choose the first number that comes to mind between 1 and 10.
3.
All right. So I like to do that because I like my people to choose the number of times that I shuffle. And 10, anything beyond 10 is just too much for my forearms. You know what I'm saying? Listen, I work out, but who has the time?
We need a professional dealer for that.
Listen, did you see my dealing skills?
That's pretty solid, actually.
Reno famous, bud.
Boom.
Hashtag.
And the cards are bigger too. Like they're not easy to shuffle. I always just like smush them around the table.
That's okay. So, and we use the cards all kinds of different ways at retreats too. Like sometimes we just smear them all over the table and let people be guided however they feel. Sometimes we do traditional readings like this, and we do it all kinds of different ways. I literally just tell people like it's just cardboard. Yeah. There's nothing weird going on here. It's literally what you choose to make it. So since we're not in person, how do you feel about me going third card in?
Yeah, let's do that.
Does that feel right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So here we go. First on air. So the card that you chose, and we'll post this on our Instagram when we drop this episode. It's the mirror, and it says, "Who or what is triggering you?"
Okay.
Do you mind if I read the little blurb?
Yeah,
about it.
I think that's necessary.
Because if you guys are just listening, you guys can't see the imagery is of a girl who is bending down, looking into some water, looking at her reflection back to back. It's very, very watery, water energy. So hold on. So each of these decks comes with like a little guidebook with the messages. And like I said, you take it or leave it, but usually it's right on point. So I'm going to have you choose a card too. So you don't get out of this, mister.
Oh my God.
Yeah, we're making you do it today. All right. So here's your message. You tell me if it resonates. It says, the filter of our own experience is how we experience life 90% of the time. Through our own projections. When someone reminds us of an unhealed experience, we get triggered. Often it's an unconscious thing. People and situations can trigger our mirrors to reflect back to us what we believe to be true about life, the universe, and ourselves. Mirrors pointing to our shadow and our light. Mirrors revealing the parts of us that are yet to be accepted, witnessed, or loved. This card is guiding you to look closely at what experiences or people are currently triggering you and what they could be mirroring back to you. When have you felt like this before? Could they be opportunities to heal something in you? Or are they shining a light on something that longs to be witnessed in you? This goes for the good and the bad. The good, those who we admire and put on a pedestal. If we do not realize that we are attracted to them because we are like them, we will need to cut them down in order to rise to their level. The bad, even those we despise, are envious of and put down. If we do not realize that they are also triggering something in us, then it is still yet to be healed and we will remain hurt and wounded ourselves. So I actually think you chose this card for me. I think it's obvious that it's very on point for me.
Wow, that is crazy.
For the content of this episode.
So virtual might not work.
Yeah. Well, actually it does. I actually do a lot of readings over FaceTime and stuff.
Oh, okay.
But I had to be very like specifically, connected with that person. But that card was definitely for me. I think that the universe is getting a kick out of my discomfort. So you guys saw that in real time. All right, Jesse, you feeling brave?
Well, yeah, but if you're going to pick the card, it's going to be yours again, right?
No.
Because I'm in the room, it's going to change.
You're in the room. It's going to change.
Yeah.
Oh,
Totally.
boy.
So, what are you feeling? Angel deck, light worker deck, or spirit guide deck?
Let's do spirit guide.
All right. Ooh. Okay. All right. Same thing. However, you can get grounded. I usually recommend closing your eyes, take a big deep breath. When you're ready.
Let's go.
First number between 1 and 10 that comes to mind.
6.
6. He's making me work for it. All right. And you guys can all see here. There's no funny business going on. I'm shuffling. Have you ever had a tarot reading before, Jesse?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I'm not dealing with a novice.
Not exactly.
All right. So now I am going to have him come choose his card because we're here in person. So, and I usually say these oracle cards are like a breadcrumb card because I usually encourage people to go like research more, whoever comes up. Right?
So I'm going to have to research this.
Yeah. Or
after
like
I'm done.
Or like with the card that I just pulled, like I would invite myself to maybe consider journaling about that later and doing a little inner work on that.
Jesus got you.
She's
Got him.
Okay. So whatever card you feel drawn to, hold on, I'm going to get my camera so I can video this really quick so we can post it when we air this. Oh my gosh, decisions. All right, here we go. So everybody can see there's no funny business. He's choosing his own card. Go ahead. Yeah, you go ahead. Drum roll. We have, of course, it's one I can't pronounce. Dang it. All right.
No.
Mahavatar Babaji
Yo.
is the spirit leader that you got. So right off the bat, I'm noticing that he has the Om symbol.
Which
right?
means?
Right?
Om.
And it says soul expansion. It says your consciousness is expanding. You understand these connections that you're seeing connected between all things.
I'm hitting a sound effect on that one.
Well, and Om too, isn't it? Okay, I'm not a yoga person, but isn't it supposed to be like vibration of the universe? Like that's the sound that you make when you meditate because it like is the same vibration as the universe.
Right. So I would invite you to do some investigative breadcrumbing on that one, because you might, and this is what I tell people when I do readings, like I'm just the translator, right? Like I'm not Madame Cleo. I'm not psychic. I would not call myself anything like that. But these things are coming up. You might find more messaging or guidance through. Yeah. Like, in fact, I feel like most people do. They usually go off and look stuff up on their own, and they'll get way deeper into what was actually coming up for them. So here, let me read this. So it says, Mahavatar, and I'm so sorry if I'm butchering this. I'm so sorry.
We'll clarify it in a future one.
Mahavatar means great incarnation or avatar, and Babaji means sacred father. Mahavatar Babaji is a deeply respected master yogi who was introduced to the world through the teachings of the Indian yogi Paramhansa Yogananda. Again,
no judgment. No judgment.
Babaji, as he's called, it says Babaji, as he's called for short, is said to be over 2,000 years old and able to travel between Earth and other worlds. He is said to have an invisible temple in the Himalayas that can appear to those he wants to connect with. Many believe that he is like Christ himself, bringing deep love, acceptance, forgiveness, insight, and direction. You may feel that you've retreated from the world recently. Maybe you've not been as active socially or spiritually, but this time of inner reset has really paid off. You are becoming more and more consciously aware of how connected you are to God and all living beings. This sense of union is called yoga. Yoga goes beyond physical ability and into the sense of awareness that's created through spiritual practice, meditation, and devotion to the divine. Mahavatar Babaji, the yogic father, is here to inspire the fire of union within you so that you can understand how your thoughts and actions are creating the waves of energy that are forming your life.
I am definitely intrigued by this.
You going to yoga?
I'll start.
Okay, listen, like I couldn't help myself, so I had to look this up too.
See, this is how it starts. This is how it starts, guys.
This is blowing my mind right now because we talked about like our nervous system. And remember when I talked about the vagus nerve specifically? So it was saying that when you chant Om, it specifically stimulates that nerve to help regulate your rest and digest, your parasympathetic nervous system that sends signals to your body telling you that you are safe. And so that's one of the reasons that they chant it or use it as like to start or end a yoga session, to like really get back to that resting state.
Wow. And see, look, this is the stuff that we can't make up. This is what happens every time. This is actually, thank you, Jesse. Honestly, thank you for being willing to do that, because it's cool to be able to wrap up this episode with like, this is what I'm talking about. Like, it's not what I was led to believe it was when I was sort of entrenched in church culture, right? Like it is more. There's these little, and really it's not just with cards. If you're paying attention, if you're listening to your life, all these synchronicities and coincidences and little messages, even the random songs that come on that just like simply say specifically what you might need to hear at a certain time. Like you can believe that's coincidental and insignificant, or it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And so like with that card, Jesse, like if I were giving you a full reading, I would say like dig into that, because you would probably find more waiting for you if you follow those breadcrumbs.
So I do want to say one thing on air to everyone who's listening. Mandi, I was one of those people that kind of questions this process, but how you explained it at the very beginning, it brought me in. So I want to say, good job.
That's my girl.
Oh my God.
That's why she's got to share it more. It's so special.
Oh, shucks. Reluctant pilgrims.
I was a reluctant pilgrim about this.
Well, dude, thank you. Thank you for that. And you guys know, like, honestly, that this was kind of uncomfy for me, because it's literally like, I mean, it's out there now. It's literally, you know.
Yeah.
And so I know I've probably got some conversations in my future, but that's just the thing about this, 1982 portal.
Yeah.
We just can't live a lie anymore. And yeah, the card I just pulled. We're not going to talk about that because we're going to be mad about it. All right. Well, Rachel, Dawn, thank you so much for pushing me out of my comfort zone. And this time it wasn't on a mountain somewhere on some hiking trail. So at least there's that.
Could have been worse.
It really could have. I love you so much. Thank you so much for believing in my magic. And I'm going to think of something uncomfortable for you to do next time.